Hello and welcome to today's lecture on exercise. What are the benefits of exercise? Why is it so highly recommended? Well, first and foremost, exercise is linked to increased learning and memory. This was first found in rodents, namely rats, and then further studies show that this is true for humans as well. And later follow-up studies over the years show that it has to do with brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. We can talk about this later in the course, not super important for right now. So people learn things quicker and the memories tend to stay longer. When we exercise, tends to be helpful. Other things that exercise is important with is it delays cognitive decline. So what you see with older adults is those that exercise regularly tend to show age-related changes in cognition at a later age, showing that it's a protective factor. Another is reduced risk for neurodegeneration. So if you look at different neurodegenerative diseases, namely Alzheimer's and more broadly dementias, what you see is that exercise is very helpful in stopping the symptoms or at least delaying the symptoms till later in life. And that's a big perk of exercise. And lastly, also what you see is that exercise is good at alleviating depression. It can at least assist in the process. It's good for treating depression and then also for preventing episodes of depression to come up again in the future. What else? Let's look at the brain itself. So when I say exercise is linked to learning and memory, it makes sense that the part of the brain that mediates learning and memory is involved. So a larger hippocampus is what you tend to see in those that exercise more. Again, this was first discovered in rats, and it was kind of by accident. It was rats that were living in a more enriched environment with access to exercise tended to have a larger hippocampus, and this is very much true for humans as well. Also, what do you see? So naturally, if the hippocampus becomes larger, it's probably because new cells were created, and that's exactly what neurogenesis is the creation of new cells. So you see that with prolonged exercise. Also, angiogenesis. So this is discussed less, but it's very important too. So basically, this is creating new blood vessels, and you would imagine that this would be important because we say again and again that the brain is a very vascular organ, meaning that it needs a lot of oxygen to do well, and that's what blood supplies, oxygen and nutrients. So increasing the supply lines to the brain is very important, and we see that as well. And lastly, we also see greater dendritic complexity. So remember the dendrites, they're kind of like the branches that connect areas to each other. And the idea is with greater dendritic complexity, more areas can influence other areas, and it's a sign too of learning happening. And overall, we tend to see greater dendritic complexity as overall a very good thing for the brain. Lastly, in the other paper, what you should have looked at was aging, different ways to measure it. And specifically what they were looking at was kind of efficacy towards brain aging. So being able to use different brain scans and to see if it's predictive or an important factor in understanding aging. And how they did it was they had a bunch of brain scans, and then they used a process called deep learning, which is a technique in machine learning, which is also kind of the broad umbrella of AI, artificial intelligence, which only just means training algorithms to understand data. That's all it really is. Big words for statistics is really what it is, complex statistics. So typically when we see aging, we see aging as years. So really it's measuring it very subjectively. All aging really is how many times has the sun gone around, or the earth gone around the sun since you've been alive? How many trips around the sun have you had? That's how we count how old people are in our culture. And this is, the most common practice is chronological aging. And the authors here suggest maybe expanding our scope, or at least including different metrics. And this one is what they call biological aging. So it's using biomarkers to predict length of remaining life. So specifically, what they were doing was using MRI and looking at the area in different regions of the brain to predict, well, what's your brain's age? And what was interesting about this study was that using MRI, they actually got some important metrics, and it was associated with real world phenomenon. So what that means is that it shows actual efficacy, meaning that it's probably worth something, and it's an important measure. So what brain age was associated with was lower grip strength. And for those that study aging, we see grip strength pretty frequently. And grip strength is often related to longevity, so how much longer someone's going to live, this grip strength. Other things, lower forced expiratory volume, so that has to do with the lungs and their ability to expire carbon dioxide, slower walking time, and lower levels of fluid cognition. Fluid cognition is just another name for like higher order decision making. So it goes into contrast with what's called crystallized intelligence, which is the same thing as semantic memory. So fluid cognition is being able to problem solve, do math problems, stuff like that. So those are some things that are connected there. And one kind of key finding they had was that for each year older the brain was than chronological age, it was linked with a 6% increased risk of mortality. So why that's important is it shows that this is actually linked to our longevity. So definitely we've always known that there's lots of important ways to understand our aging. And typically we think about it of years of life, but by looking at our brain, that also might be an important way to look at it. There have been lots of other scientists that have looked at it in different ways. DNA methylation is one way that people look at it. Another way is telomere length. But in this case, we looked at biological aging from the lens of the brain's age. And it shows that it can be an important way to get some information on how an individual is doing overall. So that's the talk today. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.